Secretary of State Steve Simon joining me, and we are talking about a lot of things with this election. Short time till the primary on August 11th. Steve, let's start out with just the very basic. I think there's some confusion with the absentee versus mail-in, and there's a lot of push right now for people to do one or the other. But let's start out with just explaining the difference between the two.
Yeah, it's really easy for people to get them mixed up. And so pure mail-in voting of the kind that you sometimes hear talked about at the national level. There are 5 or 6 states that do that and have done that even before this pandemic. And what that is, it's not our system, it's a system in those other states where if you're a registered voter, you're in the system already, you automatically get a ballot sent to you, automatically. You don't have to request it, ask for it, you don't have to want it, it just comes to you. So that's that system, but that's not what we're doing here in Minnesota. What we're doing instead, or what has always been an option for many, many decades, is voting from home using the mail. That's not the same thing. The voter has to do something. The voter has to either go to a website, which is mnvotes.org, that's our website, or they can go stop physically into a city hall or a county courthouse and pick up the form. But either way, the voter has to do something. They have to ask for that to come to them. And then, and only then, would it come to where they live and they can vote that way. So that's the key difference. The voter has to do something versus the voter gets something automatically without ever having to ask.
I saw something recently that your office had put out that you are urging people to do the mail-in voting. Should your office be pushing any kind of method of voting, or shouldn't you just be more so behind the get out and vote push?
Oh, it really is the latter. Overwhelmingly what we do day in and day out is saying, just vote. We don't care, obviously, who you vote for or even how you vote. What we are doing is telling people that that is an option available to them. Not everyone knows that. It was only a few years ago that the legislature expanded the law so that any eligible voter can vote that way, and they don't have to give a reason or an excuse. And even though it's a few years old, it's 7 years old now, a lot of people haven't gotten that memo. So this is a reminder for them to consider that option. Now, normally the pitch or the reason why people like to vote that way, that is voting from home, is comfort and convenience. They can vote with their feet up, vote while they're watching TV or eating a meal, etc. But this year there's an added component that we think it's important to discuss, and that is that it's arguably a public service in the sense that during a time of a pandemic, every person who chooses, and it is a choice, every person who chooses to vote from home is arguably making the polling place a little bit safer for those who do show up on election day to vote. And I'm not just talking about the voters, I'm talking also about the poll workers. We got about 30,000 of them throughout Minnesota. We want to make sure that they're safe too. So it's an option. We're very clear about that in writing. And when I talk, nobody has to do it, but it could be a very useful option for people who might otherwise not have known about it. You can't vote from home. You don't need a reason or an excuse. It's simple. You can just go to a website, and you might be helping other folks out.
If every safety precaution, though, is being taken at the polling places, shouldn't we be telling people to vote in person because there is a less likelihood for any kind of potential fraud to take place?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that's true. And I would say that it depends on everyone's tolerance for risk. If someone has a particular health condition, they just might not want to take that risk of going to a polling place. And keep in mind, we're not starting at zero. Last election in 2018, 24% of voters, before anyone had heard the term COVID-19, 24% of Minnesota voters voted absentee in some form, either in person or at a city hall or county courthouse. So we're not starting at zero. We're starting at almost a quarter who already say they really like this. So in terms of safety at the polling place, I do want to emphasize for your viewers, anyone who chooses that option to go on election day will know that that will be as safe as we can make it. Our office has purchased and is distributing to all 3,000 polling places high-grade masks for all election judges, regular grade or more disposable masks for voters who show up without one. We're going to have hand sanitizers, pumps, wipes, and a bunch of rules in place that we've worked out in formulation with the CDC and with the Department of Health that will govern everything from how you sign your name to the wipe down automatically of every polling surface after every voter uses it, that kind of thing. So make no mistake, we're going to have a very safe polling place, but there are people with health conditions or even not with health conditions that just might not want to take that risk, and that's up to every individual.
I heard from an election judge who had written to me saying that she is afraid that mail-in voting has the potential to be very corrupt. I'm sure that your office has heard some of this. Are their concerns valid? And what is it that makes people feel this way?
Yeah, well, here's how and the short answer is no, I don't have concerns about that. And this judge that you talked to may be thinking about what other states are doing, the system that is not ours, the one that I explained about how people are automatically getting the ballot. And that's not what we're doing. That's not what we've ever done in Minnesota statewide. But here's how the question most often comes to me in a specific form. People will ask a question like this. They'll say, hey, you know, all these blank ballots floating around in the mail, right? What's to prevent someone from stealing a pack of ballots on a pallet in a post office, or camping out by unguarded residential mailboxes and just swiping 2 or 20 or 100 and voting them, right? That's usually what people mean when they talk about corruption. And it's a very fair question to ask, right? Blank ballots everywhere, right? What's going to happen? But there's a very simple answer for that in Minnesota. And that is, in Minnesota, we have checks against that. And here's what the check is. Every voter who orders one of those ballots, either by going to the website or filling out a paper form, has to provide some personal identifying information. So it can be last four of social, it can be a driver's license number, it can be a state ID number, it could be other things if the voter doesn't have any of those things. The point is, it's something that ties the ballot to a specific voter. So unless the mailbox thief or the post office thief has the precise personal information, personal identifying information that the intended voter uses when the intended voter ordered the ballot, unless they have that, they can send in 100 ballots or 200 or 1,000. And you know what? They're never going to be counted. They will be destroyed. They will be burned, and they'll never be counted. So that's the check we have in Minnesota. And by the way, I asked, just a matter of sort of common sense, I guess, I asked not only our elections director, but others around the state who have been involved in statewide elections in Minnesota for decades, a lot longer than I have. And I said, do you know of a single case, even one, where someone has successfully voted an absentee ballot that way? They swiped someone else's ballot from a mailbox or a post office, they intercepted it somehow, and they guessed correctly what form of ID they had used. Do you know of a case? And their answer to me universally was no, they don't know of a single case. Now, maybe there was one that they just don't know about, but they don't know about it. So Minnesotans should know it's a secure system. We've been doing this for decades, since the 1920s and 30s. It works, and it's one of the reasons why Minnesotans have voted in such sky-high numbers. They know it's an honest, very decentralized system run in 3,000 polling places by 87 county auditors. It's spread out, it's decentralized, and that's one of the reasons it works.
There's so much money, Steve, that is put into these campaigns, get out the vote, and so much emphasis put on that. In this day and age, when there's so much at stake and so much on the line, I think people know to get out and vote. Is that naive of me to think that? Do we need to spend that kind of money and have these kinds of campaigns? People are getting out and they're voting in record numbers in our last election.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think people should get out and vote. Doesn't matter who they're voting for, doesn't matter what political party they are. If nothing else, we've got a record and reputation to uphold in Minnesota, right? We've been #1 in the country for 2 times in a row. Let's make it 3 times in a row. But even if we're not #1, I think we're likely to be among the very top states. Minnesotans take elections seriously, and even during a pandemic, we will find a way. And we will have very high turnout because people know that the stakes are high. And I'm not just talking about the presidential election. It could be a school board election. It could be anything. People in the state really do care, and they show that by voting with their feet. So whether it's turning out at a polling place or whether it's voting from home, that's anyone's option. But I do encourage people to at least take a look at the option to vote from home, because it's one they might not have known about, and it might fit their particular needs.
We have less than 2 weeks before the primary, and then, of course, the general election. I appreciate your time to speak with me right now, and hopefully we can talk to you before November. Steve, thank you.